Welcome to this edition of Great Books, a lively discussion of a selection from the canon of exceptional literature. Here's your host, Jack Hatfield.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us for the Great Book Show. I'm Jack Hatfield. Our panel meets monthly to discuss great works of classic and modern literature. Today we're discussing On Happiness by Aristotle from one of his most influential works, the Nicomachean Ethics. Here, the key question Aristotle seeks to answer is, what is the ultimate purpose of human existence? What is that end or goal for which we should direct all our activities? Aristotle was born in Athens in 384 BC. He's one of the greatest thinkers in the history of Western science and philosophy. He's made contributions to logic, metaphysics, mathematics, physics, biology, botany, ethics, politics, agriculture, medicine, and theater. He was a student of Plato, who in turn studied under Socrates. My first question is, what does Aristotle mean by happiness? If I think of happiness, it's sitting in Wrigley Field with a beer in one hand and a hot dog in the other, watching the Cubs win the series. How does he differ from that?
He's not a Cub fan.
No,
Sox fan.
Good one, Jay.
yeah. How does he define happiness?
Well, you've limited that to one form of pleasure, but happiness is a wider umbrella than that, the ultimate wide umbrella.
Which means?
Which means, I think his central thesis is that it subsumes every other type of good in a hierarchy, and that happiness is the ultimate because it is never used as the means to achieve some other good. It's self-sufficient. Now we can all go home.
He says activity in conformity with virtue, and
Yes.
he repeats that several times.
With perfect
it's
virtue.
not happiness unless it's virtuous.
Right.
Perfect virtue.
And the way he describes it, you have to be the perfect person. It has to be excellence, has to be virtuous, all of your activity. Now, I think you can be happy.
I think he's concerned that people conflate happiness with pleasure or wealth or some other aspect of it. And so what he's trying to do is say that happiness supersedes all of those and includes all of those. So both the Cubs and the Sox.
Well, it might not. I mean, if it's, you can make an argument for, if you're a Sox fan, that's not ethical or something like that. It has to be ethical.
That's
It
right.
has to be.
It has to satisfy the lower criteria.
Which are?
Virtue.
Honor.
So what does
Everything
virtue?
has its own end. Everything aims at a certain end.
Yeah.
Its own proper end. And you have to conform to that first, whatever it might be, in whatever area of, whether you're a thing or whether it's knowledge or whatever.
One of the things he comments on about happiness is it's not till you're almost to the end of your life.
No, it is the end of your life.
He has no use for the younger generation because of any experience.
Oh, I thought
They
that
don't
was
have
a
enough.
great line.
Yeah, until you can see it objectively from without, you can't judge it. But then he talks about how it's still possible to be happy during your life or to
Right.
aspire to
It
happiness.
seems
through
to be.
virtue.
It seems to be because, he says it's an activity of the soul. Well, if it's an activity,
Happiness as an activity.
are there units of happiness, activity?
Well, it kind of breaks it down a little bit into all these different categories. It's,
It's 3 levels, though, really.
I'd change what Les said a little bit, because what he's saying, it has to be complete. Your life has to be complete, not that you're a week beforehand, and after that week, during that week you do something bad, you've not been happy in life. And he has a very strange comment for me, is that your happiness can be affected by what happens after your death.
Only
I
slightly.
didn't get that.
right.
Or possibly it's
I did not
negligible.
understand that
I didn't
premise
either.
at all.
Anyone take
Maybe
a
it was
shot?
a translation from Greek to English.
Well, you know what
It's all
got
Greek to me.
me? Throughout the whole paper, he uses the word activity, so many times. Then he's talking about activity after we die. I don't get it.
Well, the soul goes on. It might be just intellectual activity after death. Or it
The
might go
intellectual and moral legacy of the person could be active and possess some form of happiness after death.
Do you think he was saying that?
Well, it's a legacy of what his children and
Yes.
family deals
And posterity,
with. And
yeah.
they may not be happy, so is he going to be unhappy because they're not
No,
happy?
it's an entity outside of them.
Right, yes.
So you can't be, if you're 45 years old, you can't be happy by his definition, right? Because your life
It
is not.
depends on the miles you've seen.
I don't think
Because
so.
that's the important part.
Yeah, depends
Is
on
to have
what-
experienced and to have the judgment of years and distance to be able to perceive clearly.
I think it's part of it, but I think he's saying you have to look at your complete life. It's like a football game. They
Ain't
have a-
over till it's over.
Yes, it's not over till it's over. And so he's saying someone can't be happy, my interpretation, at age 45 unless you die then. Because it has to be...
Unless you die happy
I
at
thought
45
one of
in
the
conformity with
subheadings-
virtue.
Right.
I thought one of the subheadings said
think
something
so.
about the possibility of happiness during the lifetime.
How happiness is acquired.
Yeah.
Can a man be called happy during his lifetime? That's the next subhead.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's more words than no, but
Happiness equals activity, basically, is what it boils down to. I mean, in some respects, he's almost an existentialist. You live in the
That's
moment.
what I was thinking.
You live in the moment.
and through your actions,
Right.
you practice virtue.
What got to me as we get into the back end of this thing, he uses the soul 25 times, and yet
Whatever that means.
he never really clarifies it.
Well, he tells you what it is.
Yeah, he says,
It's a
but
two-part entity.
right,
But that
yes,
doesn't explain.
right,
He just says there's a rational part and
And an
non-rational
irrational part, and there's
Right.
something in between, which is the seat of appetites and desires.
right.
And if that part is controlled, conforms to rational wisdom, then that's
But
good.
part of
That's
the
moral.
rational fits
If
into
it
the
doesn't,
irrational part,
It goes
too.
the other way. Well, it has to. He doesn't say they have to be intermingled, but they could be. He doesn't care. He says it doesn't matter. But he does say those three things, and then you get the moral virtue and intellectual virtue if it conforms.
And would you identify him as an elitist? Because every time he
Yes.
talks about the common man, he's degrading
Right.
them.
Right.
Well, part of his thesis is knowledge is really,
The highest.
it's like good wine, it's an acquired taste, you know. So if you got knowledge, if you obtain knowledge, that gives you freedom and that should give you happiness.
A voyage
Don't
is toward
understand.
rationality.
Not quite, because he says that outside circumstances.
Right, it will
can-
change by person, right, yes.
Yeah, you could lose all your money and
Right.
be selling pencils on the street corner, and you wouldn't be happy.
He
So-
says the
But you
virtuous
could be
person.
happy if your name is Job.
Yeah.
He handled it.
But he says the virtuous
He says
person
it's
can
different.
take the knocks, but the big ones, everybody gets knocked down. He says they can take knocks as they go along, but outside circumstances also give big knocks that knocks everybody down.
Yeah, that's the way I understood it. It's still, we could get really caught up in this, but just a comment was, I don't think he defined soul, which you listed out, doesn't define it. I have
Or at
no
least
idea
the
what he
selection.
Well, I mean, part
It's a
of
source of freedom.
well, part of our reading of this is that we're predisposed to that word meaning something else. In his work De Anima, he clearly states, well, he gives you two options, but basically he's saying he doesn't think the soul exists after death, whereas Plato said it did. So
That doesn't define it. So-
no, it doesn't define it.
okay.
No, it's
We'll read
He
that.
was probably, well, he does talk about that whole section on the soul there. I think that's what he wants us to know.
right. 25 times he used that in the last just in the
and,
last 3 or 4
that's
pages.
the principle of, if you're alive, you have a soul, and it's the soul
Since-
that moves things forward, has aims.
Right.
The soul is the center of
Since
aims.
happiness is a certain activity of the soul in conformity with perfect virtue, we must now examine what virtue or excellence is. So he kind of skates around with the soul. We're going to go somewhere else.
No, he does talk about it somewhere, apparently. It says we talked about it in some other book.
Activity of the soul, that's kind of what he keeps harping on is.
What did you think of his statement that the good of the state has a higher priority than the good of the individual?
That sounds like communism. to me.
It certainly did to
I don't
me.
know, Hegel thought that too, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pardon me, I didn't.
Hegel thought
Hegel
that too.
said that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean. I
So
thought
Marx
that
and
was
Engels,
just
good to the
Marx
great-
and Engels said it too.
Yeah.
What did you think was his reason that he said that?
I don't know.
Well, he does tell us why he thought that.
Well, I think he thinks it's more for the common good. More people are influenced by that good than that one person.
Right, I think.
And in our country, in our Constitution, it's the opposite what you said. That we focus on the individual right rather than the state right.
Well, in order to form a more perfect union, so that I think that overall, so we could argue that. That's
Well,
actually
it says in here what the politician does is try to make every man good within the
Yeah,
state. That's his
he's-
study, and that's why this is the highest, the
By the
master's
way,
science.
he uses the term politics.
Yeah.
Is he saying govern?
No, it's
Well, he's got a footnote.
Government and society.
right.
And that's what I read.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Civilized.
Right, he says on page 14, thus it follows that the end of politics is the good for man,
Yeah.
which man is assuming to be those citizens of Athens, not everyone,
Right.
but to an elite group of people.
But those who get together
Those who
and
get together,
form
right,
a
correct.
society and a government
Right,
and
that's
make the
politics.
rules. This
Correct.
is what's good.
Right.
This is what's bad.
Right.
Yeah, for society.
Well,
For
those who
society.
are members of the polis.
It's order instead of chaos.
Yes,
Is what you
right.
have. Yeah.
One thing that I thought was interesting, and maybe I'm reading something into it, we're talking about prescience of other later thought, that he seemed to have picked up some of the optimism of the 18th century, that everything is for the best in the best of all possible worlds, because I think he said that the reality of nature is perfect, and that we must abide by the dictates of the natural world.
It could be the other way around. They may have picked it up from him.
Yeah, I think so. But I saw a similarity there.
But, you know, he does have this hierarchy of aims.
Right, yes.
What did he mean by the reality of nature being perfect? Because the first thing I thought of is nature is not perfect. There's a lot of imperfect things that happen.
True, but it is what it is. That's the idea, and then you got to roll with the punches.
I would say that nature's perfect, but
How do you account for
'Cause it is.
children?
It
that are
is.
What does he mean by
Well,
perfect?
That's
What
kind of
does-
what,
is that
not to get
perfect?
off the topic, but Darwin.
if you looked at the whole world, maybe so.
Right.
I wouldn't personally agree with that, but I think he's saying that. I think nature, some animals eat other animals, and that's
That's
still
perfect.
part of
It's
it.
reality.
Right.
Some die,
It's a reality.
and you know,
That doesn't make it perfect, does it?
Well, he doesn't define really what perfect is, because if you look at the Darwinian thought process, it's evolution. So if it's perfect, it shouldn't be
can't
changing.
evolve.
It's constantly changing.
Right.
So.
Yeah, but there is an end for each one of these things, and that end is united. And it doesn't say it in here, but it's the final cause for
Right.
every one of these things, and each one of these
The gods, in his case.
is true to its aim.
Right.
You know,
Right.
if it's that's
Right.
it's
The
that's what it
leopard is
means.
gonna kill-
That's right, exactly.
Final
and the
cause.
proper function of man is
What's that final part? What's that related to?
what final part?
When he talks about the final cause, what is he saying?
It's the aim,
Goodness has to be final.
the highest aim,
right.
That's
The
right.
highest.
That's
Yes.
right. Happiness.
The highest.
the highest aim,
you can't
Oh,
find.
the highest.
Right.
the highest aim.
Okay.
What you're aiming at is part of what causes you to move, to change, to live, to whatever.
Isn't it true that we don't take an action unless we feel there's a good involved in it? Every action that we take either has an apparent good or a real good. We don't take an action.
That's what the
unless
soul
there's a
does.
good.
That's what he
But we
says.
might not see the good and strive toward it.
But
That's the problem.
What he adds into it, I think, is that mankind has a purpose, a higher purpose of some sort.
To be rational.
Every person has that, and if they follow that, then they're okay. But if they don't follow that, then
They're not okay.
They're
not okay.
So
Well-
that's how he defines it, whatever it means.
Do you remember in one of the sessions I quoted Abe Lincoln? Lincoln really summarized it. He said that when I do good things, I feel good. When I do bad things, I feel bad. So I try to
You
do
stole that
good
from
things.
Aristotle.
Yeah. If you look at what he says about the soul, you know, that's something that is in between the rational and the irrational. He calls it the seat of appetites and desires. There is something in it that opposes and reacts against reason, and something that obeys reason. And the thing that obeys reason, he says, is like a father or parent correcting you, and that's conformal, and that gives you more morality. But a higher thing than that is the intelligence, you know, because it is definitely self-sufficient and could even be divine.
I read it a little different. The irrational part is kind of that Henri Bergson called it the élan vital, the spark of life. That's something that both our bodies and our mind follow. That kind of that inner growth thing, that health, going toward happiness, going toward health. And I think that's
But what makes
Part
you
of it.
read it that way?
because that's what it says.
No, it isn't
Well-
what it says.
One of the things he said that I thought summed that up, page 27, he says, the happy man will have the
Oh, I got
attribute
it.
of permanence, which we are discussing, and he will remain happy throughout his life, for he will always, to the highest degree, both do and contemplate what is in conformity with virtue. He will bear the vicissitudes of fortune most nobly
Right.
and with perfect decorum, under all circumstances, inasmuch as he is
You're
truly
gonna roll
good
with the punches.
and foursquare
He's a
without
stoic.
reproach. Right.
He's the magnificent Stoic. He's Socrates.
Right. He's many things.
What you know, in our readings and other works we've read about people that have in Chekhov or whatever, who at the kind of the last minute of their life have changed. Even they're faced with a situation that changes them, and they turn into moral people. He is saying that that's
If
not.
you blow it, it's done. Because your life has not been one of perfect virtue,
Right,
and so
correct.
you've missed the boat for happiness.
Right. Virtue and no good.
Yeah.
It's got
Right.
to start at the beginning.
Yeah.
Well-
and all the way through.
Right.
Whenever it starts is good,
Right.
Right.
but you will not be happy because you won't have done enough. Is that what he's saying?
You're only happy when you're dead.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not so sure he means that.
Well, you can be unhappy when you're dead too if your family goes to pot. So.
Let me throw in a quote
Right.
here. This is on 30 in this page. It
Yeah,
says,
that's all right.
of the irrational element again, one part seems to be common to all living things and vegetative in nature. I mean that part which is responsible for nurture and growth. That's what I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, but that's over here. This is irrational. That's part of the irrational.
It's part of irrational. It
Yes,
takes care of
right.
itself.
Right.
But he
Yeah.
says further
But that's
on,
part
the
of-
rational is still part of the irrational.
Well, he doesn't. Yeah, they're together,
They
but he
can
doesn't
exist-
say whether they're mingled or to
Right.
be.
They can exist side by side.
He said it doesn't matter whether we consider that point here, but he says, given both the irrational and the rational, something that partakes of reason is in between and a part of each one, and a part of it goes the wrong way, and a part of it responds to the rational. And the part that responds to the rational, you begin to get moral virtue, and eventually you get intellectual virtue, which is the highest of all, the virtue of the gods.
I didn't read it that way, but I didn't read it as a part in between the
Well,
rational
he
and
says it.
irrational.
In addition, it seems to be another integral element of the soul, which, though irrational, still does partake of reason in some way.
Right.
They're mingled.
Yes,
They're mingled.
somewhere.
And then further along, it says
Right.
that, I can't find it, but he says that it also has a rational part too. It
So-
goes the other way, that obeys.
What
like-
else in here did you struggle with? I struggled with a lot.
That's why we're still reading them, because we're still struggling with
Well,
them.
I'm wondering if.
Well, I
some of
wondered
them-
how you felt about dismissing the young as it relates to governing.
Well, I
He
think
said
he's
they don't have enough
partly
life
right.
experiences.
Yeah.
And he also said the young react to emotions. You know, it's not only the young that do that.
Well, at what age are you no longer young back then? You know, probably
Right.
10 or 12,
Right.
you're considered,
They're dead by 45, most cases.
could be,
Oh, yeah.
unless you're one of these guys.
And he's defining it in a certain way. I mean, we could define it differently because he's saying a baby can't be happy in his definition. A young kid couldn't be happy.
Happy, right.
in his
Be
definition.
content.
it says that
can experience
specifically.
pleasure.
Children
Yes.
can't be happy,
Right.
even though they're naive.
Right, but that's by his definition.
Right.
But
we would
once
apply
the
it.
intellect starts to develop, that's a part of virtue. And if you conform to the intellect, even partially, I don't see why you're not partially happy.
Half happy.
Right, well, it's
Yeah.
like half pregnant, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, 2 months as opposed to,
I don't
I mean,
think
if
would
you consider
agree with
pregnancy
that.
the whole life.
So how do we get happy? That's something we can control, right? Whether we're happy or not?
No. There are things that we can't control.
Right.
Bad things such as Job, or what do they call that, force majeure.
Yes.
And you have to deal with that equitably. We were talking about, rolling with the punches. And there are the things that you can control, and you need
Right.
to dedicate your life to virtue and doing the right thing.
he's describing it as an activity, though.
Yes.
That's
As an activity.
really the
Yeah,
key,
just
the key thing.
being
Right,
good
that's the
has no
existential side
value.
of it, right. You have to,
You
it's an
have to
active,
work at
active,
it.
right,
You have to
exactly.
have
I think we mix up satisfaction and happiness. I think you can do things that satisfy you, but a lot of people identify that as being happy.
Yes.
Pleasure, you mean?
Oh, well, pleasure is one of them.
Pleasure.
Right. Well, I think he'd find that as incomplete happiness.
That's right. It's just an
not-
aspect.
It's just an aspect of
I
it.
don't, it could be, but I didn't read that. I didn't get that.
Oh, it's
I
one of
thought
the
he-
ingredients, I
Right.
thought.
Yeah, I mean,
I
you
don't
go
think-
through all these
But
stages.
doing good is pleasurable in and of itself, he says, too.
Right.
It's
the end-
self-sufficient.
But that's
right.
not happiness, I don't think.
But if you're
Yes,
on the
it
right
is.
path, it becomes pleasant, and pleasantness is a bonus of happiness. It's a component of happiness.
The highest good is happiness, and the
Could be.
reverse.
Doing good is pleasurable.
And he says one thing, if we follow our pleasure, we get to happiness, I believe. Or we get
Yeah,
to
it's
virtue.
an
So-
aspect, but it's
Yeah,
not
an
a thing in itself.
That's right.
Pleasure is a step
It
in the
leads to
process.
something, so it's not
right.
the ultimate goal, as
Yeah.
happiness is.
Yeah.
And
Right.
one of the
Leads to
things I'd
happiness.
like to, from your experience, Jack, is what would the Buddha say about this, and how he would look at happiness the way Aristotle presents it. I think that'd be a good topic to delve
They
into.
wouldn't recognize the soul and all these other words,
right.
virtue.
But
what
they're
does that
both
mean?
dealing with, I think, that state of mind,
Yes.
that we're looking for. And the thing that comes to my mind most recently is Joseph Campbell when he says, "Follow your bliss." But
Yeah,
again, that
well-
follow your bliss is based on a moral construct.
Well,
And in
listen to this from the end. He says, we should try to become immortal as far as that is possible and do our utmost to live in accordance with what is highest in us. For though this is a small portion of our nature, it far surpasses everything else in power and value. One might even regard it as each man's true self, since it is the controlling and better part.
So,
Well, life is a striving for what he considers the highest good, which
Right.
is
Yeah.
rationality. And why isn't it partial happiness as you're getting there?
Well, the last sentence, in other words, a life guided by intelligence is the best and most pleasant for man, inasmuch as intelligence, above all else, is man. Consequently, this kind of life is the happiest.
Yeah. So are we saying that life can be pleasant and we won't know until the end whether we've been happy?
yes,
what he's saying.
exactly.
Pretty much.
That's what he's saying.
Exactly.
Well,
You look back on it and say, well,
that's
gee.
what I was asking.
He talked about the contemplative life.
Right.
Yes.
And then he said, we'll handle that later. He never
And then he
went
never
in-
did, no.
He never
Except-
went
except
into
at
it.
the end.
But you had the idea that he thought that was a good thing. And I never got that. I got that mixed up all the time with his use of the term activity. Because the contemplative life, they're not too active.
Well, he was
But it
saying,
is an activity.
What it is, yeah.
he's calling throughout and much earlier here is one way to get to happiness is through education. You can be
Right.
taught.
No,
You can
right.
learn happiness. And that education, I think, is the contemplation.
It's not only that, you go back to the start. Activity is tied to the politics. It's tied to the activity of the citizens
Right.
within the city-state.
To make it good.
Right, to
Makes
make
it
it
sound
good.
good.
Right.
Make them all good.
So ultimately, the individual
We've
fades
left
into the
out
background.
politics
Right, yeah.
from this
Yeah,
equation.
that's a very important part
Well, the
of
highest
this.
before that is, you know, to fight, and what's the other one?
I'm not sure.
Honor and military and battle were the two
Right,
highest virtues.
yeah, I had some questions on that. I wasn't sure where he was going with
Die
that.
for the state.
Why don't we just got very little time, and why don't we, what did you agree with, disagree with? We'll just go around, like, dislike. David?
I thought it was interesting because he breaks it down into such basic things that you've assumed all your life, and then isolates them and capsulizes them in a way that I hadn't considered. So I thought it was interesting.
Jake?
Well, the way he kept arguing, moving up the ladder and creating this chain based on ends, that in a sense you just had to know them by looking at whatever he was talking about, which is how we know things anyway. It's by intuition, and then we reason from there. That was his method, I thought. The whole first part of this is method.
Right, exactly, right.
How do we get
The
there?
how to.
Right, yeah.
Two things. One is, there's a lot of terms that he used that I didn't quite understand, and one of them being soul, and how do you really understand what is virtuous or not virtuous? You know, he's saying we kind of know that, and I don't think that's true. The second is, many of the writers at this time and a little bit later place reason so at the pinnacle of our being, and recent experiments show that reason can be affected so much about, you know, you have a group of people and you show them a disturbing film beforehand, and they'll give them a logical problem and they'll answer it this way, and if you give them a very pleasant one, they'll answer it a different way. So it seems that they're proving nowadays that emotion is far more important and drives everything, including drives reason, which vitiates, I think, all of this argument. But
Well, only if they're separate.
go ahead.
Well, I thought it was a good read, but I had to read paragraphs several times.
I read the whole thing about 5
And
times.
I was a little frustrated because one of the things I liked is he defined a lot of terms, but he didn't define a lot of terms, other terms.
Okay.
That was
Real quick.
I agree with Jake. The methodology here is very good, and the logic that he's put in place. I mean, he starts with a premise, and he takes you to an end, and there's steps all the way, and he kind of describes them. So,
Thank you all. I hope you enjoyed the show. Join us next time as we discuss another great book. As Aristotle said, the best way to learn is to get together in small groups and discuss great ideas.